Okay, so this lesson is going to be about another pretty standard jazz tune that a lot of people like to play, especially when they're just starting up because it's an easy tune. And this one's a bossa, just kind of like it's a Latin groove. It's primarily Brazilian, I believe. So if you want to look up, obviously Stan Getz, Bossa Novas, those are probably the ones that if you wanted to get this style. But right now, we're just going to look at the melody, mostly look at the chord changes a little bit and kind of see where we're at. So this is in concert C minor. So we're going to talk a little bit about minor harmony and minor 2/5s in this because they're a little different. Not much. They're the same idea, but there's just a few things that are changed because of the minor scale and how it works differently from the major scale. And then you've got, harmonic minor versus melodic minor and all that good stuff. So we'll get into that a little bit. So let's just look at it's a medium bossa. So about da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's usually where it's played. I've heard it faster, but that's usually about where people like to play it. So here we got C minor. This is the melody. It just basically goes down the scale, starting on the fifth and going up to the fifth. D da 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 ba da da da. And it basically repeats that same phrase again, just a step down in the key. It's a really simple little melody here, and I'll play it for you here real quick. So that's how that goes. That's pretty simple. And then the bridge, these 4 bars right here, the bridge are kind of different, but it basically has that same shape to it. Da 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 dee, da da. And then this is just kind of the tag ending. Ba ba da 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 da. So that sounds like this. So that's basically what the tune sounds like. It's pretty easy. That's why a lot of times, you'll see it played, in, kind of beginning jazz books and things on how to do this because it's a simple melody and the chords aren't really that difficult and it's not swing, so it's something different to play, which is always nice. Okay, so let's take a look at their chords. So obviously our first 2 bars, like most tunes, we have our 1 chord, C minor 7, C minor 9, whatever you want to voice it as, but basically C minor. You want to play the Dorian or you want to play the natural minor? Well, because there's this F minor 7 here, and the F minor 7 kind of implies that there's an A flat in it rather than A natural, I would play natural minor. So I would play A flats instead of A naturals. Because remember, your Dorian minor is only flat and third, and flat and seventh. The 6th remains natural, so it would be an A natural. But in natural minor, it's A flat because you get the flat in third, 6th, and 7th. So you don't want to do that here, primarily because there's this F7 here. Now you could play Dorian; it's not wrong, but like that's where the intelligence comes in on how to read these chords, because if there was no C, and then same thing here with the B flat 7, this kind of 2/5 motion, motion here to like a fictitious E flat, kind of like a 2/5 of the relative major, kind of that sound. This is what kind of this is, right? Because F minor 7, B flat 7, that's a 2/5 to E flat, but we're in C minor, which is the relative minor, which is kind of why that works. But you can basically play C minor over this whole first 4 bars. But because of this, I would probably think you would want to play A flats and not A naturals. So that's how you can kind of tell whether you're dealing with Dorian minor or whether you're dealing with natural minor, is to look at the other chords around it and see kind of what the context is. So these first 4 bars, I just play some C minor shape in here. You can hit this if you really want to, but it's all the same notes anyway, and so a lot of people don't. They just play C minor. So go ahead and do that. And here we've got our minor 2-5 back to C minor, the tonic chord. So let's get into a little bit about how that works. How a minor 2-5 is different from a major 2-5. So it's really not that different. The only difference is that you're dealing with the minor scale, the natural minor scale, and not the major scale. So some of the notes are going to be different. So remember how we did it where, you had, to construct the chords, the diatonic chords, you just start, like the 2 chord starts on the second degree of the scale, and you just go stack thirds above that. Well, what happens if it's a minor scale? So let's take this. So the second note, second degree of the scale is D. So you play D, but in minor, you still have your F natural. So D natural, F natural, but it's not A natural anymore. In the minor scale, it's A flat. And then you would put the C natural on top of it. So instead of D minor 7, it's usually D minor 7 flat 5, which is what this is. Now, that's why it's called flat 5, because you've got that A flat in there that is in the scale, in the key signature that we're working with, right? And so a normal D minor 7 would have an A natural in it, but flat 5 means you flatten the fifth. The fifth of D minor 7 is A, so you would lower it a half step and it'd be A flat, which is corresponding with the key signature. And that is how that works. And then you've got this crazy hot mess right here. What is that? So that is usually G. This would be a G minor 7 flat 9 in minor, and that would be kind of the same reasoning because you still have that A flat in the key signature, and so a lot of times it'll be that kind of diminished sound because you've already got that A flat built into it already, which is the flat 9. But in this case, that's not what's going on here. So what's going on is that there's these kind of colors in the G7 chord. Now you can just write normal G7 to C minor is perfectly valid. You don't have to put extensions and flat 9s and thises and that's on it. But generally speaking, that's kind of how it's done in minor because you've got all these different notes in the scale. So first, let's take a look at the sharp 5. So now what's the sharp 5 of G? So count up G, A, B, C, and D. So the fifth is D. So what's the sharp 5? You raise it a half a step, which means it's D sharp. And enharmonically, D sharp is the same as E flat, which is in the key signature right here. So it's basically kind of, again, accounting for the key signature. But then there's this sharp 9 deal going on. So the sharp 9 is an interesting sound, and it's one of my favorite sounds to play over a dominant chord. But in this context, it kind of makes this almost not even sound like a dominant chord anymore, because the thing that really makes a dominant chord sound like a dominant chord is that you've got the leading tone in it that leads into the 1 chord, right? And this case would be B natural, right? The third is the leading tone. The third of the 7th, the G7, would be B natural, which is the leading tone of C. But sharp 9 means sharp 9 and flat 3 is the same idea. So you would count up from G. The reason it's 9 and it's not 2 is because generally speaking, that's the way it voices on the piano, but it's kind of the same thing. Okay, let's count up 9. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So it's A. The 9 and the 2 are the same thing. So think of it as just 2, G, A is the second. So what does that sharp 9 mean? It means it's going to be an A sharp, also known as B flat, which is a half step below B natural, which would be the leading tone. So you almost kind of have this almost modal sound going on because there's not a clear leading tone in it, although there is. If the piano was going to voice it, you'd probably voice it 3/7 on the bottom and sharp 5 and sharp 9 on the top. So there is a leading tone in there, but it's kind of buried. And that's why sometimes in blue bossa, it's a little bit hard to hear this unless you have a pretty good ear, because there's not a clear leading tone in it. But it's basically a dominant chord. And so what you can do is you can either choose to play the leading tone or just play a pentatonic over this. Which pentatonic, if you guys don't know, is just a 5-note scale. So C minor, pentatonic would be C, E flat, F, G, and B flat. And those all fit within this. And you can also just, improvise right into the C minor again, and it sounds okay. Or you could play, a diminished sound over it and pretend that it's flat 9. That's a thing you can do. Play more of a diminished sort of harmonic minor sound. You could play a natural minor sound. I mean, you can really do a lot, but or you can do a combination of that where you kind of alternate between, like, you voice lead from the sharp 9 or the leading tone, the B natural, into the B flat, because you have room to do that because it has both the natural 9 it has the third and the sharp 9 in it. So hopefully this is making sense. This isn't too confusing. But it'll make sense once I play it. So let me just get my backing track and I'll play the first 8 bars of this to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. So if you could hear right in this spot, I was kind of using my C sharp to C natural, which is concert B flat to B natural right there. And so that's how that works. And then for this, it's kind of more you can hear what's going on. I played a lot of A flats in here and just kind of treated it like a 4. Instead of this being a 2/5, I just treated it like it just goes to the 4 chord right here, which is not wrong because it does, but it's functioning as a sort of different. But in this tune, it's kind of a little bit, you can kind of do whatever. Okay, so let's work on this junk right here. So now we get into a completely different key. We completely modulate to D flat major 7. That is what happens. I mean, there's no, it just, because it sounds cool. I'm sure I think there's a theoretical reason, behind that sound works, but I think, they're not that I can see. So I think it's just modulates to D flat. And so this is just a 2/5/1 in D flat major 7. And that's a really, really clear difference, because you're basically changing the entire key a half a step. Although D flat major 7 and C minor 7 have more notes in common than you might think, which is another good improvisational strategy to use, is kind of when you're bridging the gap in between these kind of chords and changing kind of temporary modulations and things like that, try to find the notes that are in common so that you can kind of, bridge the gap essentially between this chord and that chord. So obviously, I mean, they do that in the tune. You can see there's E flat and then there's another E flat right here. So obviously you can play that. But let's just go over this. Again, this is just a all major 2/5/1. All the things I said in the previous video about A train work, just transpose all of it. that's how you play that. So how do you get into that though? How do you go from C minor into playing all this? So like I said before, find the common notes. So let's just forget this. Forget the 2-5. We're in D flat major 7 now. What are the common tones between C minor and D flat major? Well, obviously, okay, so you got C natural is a big one because C natural is the major seventh of this and the root of this. D, no. E flat, yes, obviously, because it's in the tune. E flat is the third here and the ninth or the second here. Okay, so the next scale tone in C minor is F. That is common because that's the third here and the fourth here, right? So there's actually a lot more options than you think, and that's probably why it works so well, is because there's so many notes in common with them. It's just you're changing a couple notes here and there. One note that's different, obviously, there's not a G natural, it's a G flat. A flat works because it's the sixth here, the natural minor sixth, and it's the fifth here. That works. B flat is the seventh and the sixth here. So basically every note except for G and D are in common. So you can just use those common tones to get you from here to there. And then after that, start emphasizing those notes that are different to say, oh, okay, now we're in some other key now. Right? We're not in C minor anymore. We're in D flat, and I know we're in D flat. And that's what's going to get you success with this tune, okay? So that's how you do that. And then again, when you come back here, again, pretend that there's no 2-5 or just in C minor. How do you bridge the gap between that? Just use your common tones. Right now in here, so obviously you can use that A flat right there, this A flat, to bridge between that A flat and then go into your whatever sound you decide to use over the 2-5 and then into C minor, and then there's a quick turnaround, and then you're back to the top, right? So let me play the whole one chorus, and then I can kind of show you what I'm talking about here. It's a little hard for me to remember everything I said, but right here I'm trying to focus on the common notes and then the common notes out of here and into it. So that is kind of how that tune works. It's a pretty simple one. This is the only thing that would really trip you up is this 2-5 thing here, but honestly, I wouldn't even worry about that. I mean, if you're just starting out, I mean, you kind of have to observe this one because it's in the key signature, the A flat. But with this, just treat that as a G7. Don't even think of it. Even think about any of this stuff. It'll come naturally to you. Over time, play it enough, you'll hear where those things are. So just treat this as a G7 to C7, right? I want to touch on one more thing about this part because I did it in the solo that I just played. Is using melodic minor. So what melodic minor is playing the flat 6 and the flat 7. So in this case, instead of playing A flat and B flat, you would play A natural and B natural. So the only thing that would be different is the flat 3, the third. So it would be E flat, but everything else is the same as major, and that is to avoid that augmented second between the A flat and the B natural that in classical music, in all the voice leading techniques, you're not supposed to have that augmented second in there. Okay, so to compensate for that, they raise the 6 also. So the 6th and the 7th, so it's basically a major. And so if you were going to play, a 2-5-1, in this key, so it would be my D for B flat instruments and be D. Instead of, or instead of this harmonic minor, right? And that can kind of lead quite nicely into it. I believe, I don't know. I think Coltrane used that sound quite a bit. That what was that? I think Mr. PC. What was that? The one minor blues. It's not Equinox. I think it is Mr. PC where he used that melodic minor sound a lot. So go look up Coltrane playing Mr. PC if you haven't, because it's pretty cool. So that's it for that tune. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments. I'll try to answer. This is a pretty easy tune, and maybe you could make a video playing this tune so I could see what you guys are doing. So without further ado, see you in the next one.